Hey, what's up guys? So welcome back to my channel. And today, this is actually a new channel, so I guess I shouldn't say welcome back, but welcome to my channel. So this channel is obviously going to be my more technical related channel, but I'm not going to do an intro in this, as I'm sure you are reading this for the title and you want to know why I chose to leave my bootcamp, specifically Flatiron School. So, I know this is a decision that many people don't take lightly, specifically myself. I know I did tons of research before I actually chose a bootcamp, and I know cost was a big factor, which is going to be one of my main sections. And then the second thing is going to be the content. And then third is going to be why I specifically left after feeling like, I just wasn't the initial candidate. So now I do want to preface this with, I am not the traditional candidate. Okay, boot camps are fantastic for many reasons, and I had amazing instructors. So I want to give a little bit of background first. So I actually went to school for about 4 years at a university, accredited university, in a computer science program. So I already had some code background per se, as well as I already had worked for some tech companies, not doing any technical related stuff, but I had been in like customer service as well as kind of tech repair for some pretty major companies. And then my goal was just in the end to get to coding at some point. I also was learning coding in my free time, so it wasn't like something that I was completely brand new to. I had participated in several high school classes as well as some extracurricular college activities outside of my classes. So the reason I pursued the bootcamp was because at some point I could no longer afford college. I was going to college on loans and I had already racked up enough debt. I've been out of, I know debt is definitely relative to everybody, but I had hit a good threshold where I didn't feel comfortable pulling any more loans. I actually decided to go into the military to see if I can kind of further my route that way. And then I ran into some medical complications along that route, which kind of made my plans go right there. So I had to walk away from tech for a while, and I was working in like a sales and finance field where I was making good money, but I just didn't feel like I was happy. So I decided to go to a boot camp because the boot camps are known to give results. I did plenty of research and saw that a lot of the candidates did get jobs. I also had a friend who was also attending a boot camp. So my parents are also engineers, as well as I have many colleagues who are engineers that gave me plenty of feedback. So I decided that a boot camp was a great option for myself. Now, I didn't have a lot of money because, I live in Colorado and it's fairly expensive here. And even then I had tons of debt from college that I'm still paying back. And I've also made some bad choices before when I was younger that I'm still paying debts off for. Now, could I have pulled a loan? Probably. But of course, I saw the whole pay $0 until you get hired. So that was definitely something I was curious about. Now, this is mistake number one. So let's talk about that. Next step is financing. So boot camps typically range from, I've seen lowest around $2,000, I guess $1,000 if you count like your typical online ones that are kind of less known, all the way up to, I've seen up to $30,000 for, I think Lambda School is like $30,000. So that's pretty high. Even when you're saying you're gonna get $100K, six-figure job, paying $30,000 for a 6-month program or even a 3-month program is still really high. So, I saw the cost that was worth it for sure. So what I decided to do was do an ISA, an income share agreement. So this is something I highly recommend against, and this is why. So I didn't actually read the terms and conditions before I signed to it. And yes, anyone can ridicule me for that. That was my fault. I was just trying to go about it the cheapest way possible. And I know a lot of other possible students are looking at it in the same manner. They look at it as a cost. The school I chose to go to, as said before, was Flatiron School. Flatiron School has a tuition of around $15,000, something I couldn't fork out. And then if I wanted to take a loan option, I was looking at paying anywhere from $280 to $330 a month with good credit. And that was still kind of hard for my budget when I was still kind of balancing out my expenses from my past. So I had to look at a way that I can balance it. So the income share agreement was a really good option that not many boot camps actually have. It was a major deciding factor in the school I went to. So an income share agreement, what is that? An income share agreement is when you agree to give the school basically 10% of your income for 48 months until basically you pay them back with an income cap on top of that. What is an income cap? So the income cap varies by school, but my school uses Vimo, which is 1.5 times the amount that you pool. So essentially, if you went to school and got a $15,000 loan, they can basically put a cap on your maximum payments of 1.5 times that amount, which is around $21,000. So it was a large amount, but I wasn't paying it up front. And that's kind of what got me hooked on that. So it wasn't until I actually started the program kind of realizing just how intense these programs are. I come from a coding background, like I had some basic knowledge, nothing too advanced, but more than I'd say a beginner. And even for me, it was pretty difficult. I was working really long days. I wouldn't typically be off work till later. And then when I was off work, basically I was just so tired that it was really hard to focus on code. And these programs they're rough. So I was at least spending 2 hours a day in coding. In the first hour, it's just kind of researching and figuring out what you're gonna do before you actually get to the coding part. So that was my major mistake there. And then I'll loop back around to this income share agreement at the end, but basically it ended up not haunting me, but it put me in a bad predicament that I didn't want to be in after I left the bootcamp. So part 2 was basically what their curriculum offers. So Flatiron School is a heavily Ruby-based curriculum. It's Ruby on Rails, as well as they teach you other things like Sinatra, which is built on top of Ruby, and then they have JavaScript, a very small portion. They like fly over HTML and CSS. I actually took my own time. I had known some before, but I took Colt Steel's course on Udemy in between my class. That way I would be familiar with HTML and CSS, as well as I did free code camp and other stuff like that. Just because it was really fast, it's crazy. Maybe 6 lectures tops. So next, basically they go into JavaScript and web development. They label the program as software engineering immersive, which is totally not true. It is heavily web-based. So if you want to be a web developer. And going into this, I guess I didn't have a problem with it. It wasn't until I actually started learning code for myself that I discovered I actually like the backend. I like dealing with the nitty-gritty and the APIs and the servers and basically the databases, like using MySQL and stuff like that to access that. As well as what kind of started getting to me is after I was looking into internships and other programs, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of them that were Ruby-based. Now, yes, I know that you can apply Ruby to other languages, but that kind of fell short when I was trying to do interview questions and Ruby wasn't a selected language. So basically, that's where I kind of started to see problems with it. I started noticing that I wasn't really getting the curriculum feel that I wanted to out of it. As well as I noticed a lot of jobs were offering basically way more advanced training programs as long as you knew the fundamentals of the language. So this is kind of when I took a break from the school. I had actually fallen behind because it was very intense and I was dealing with a lot of work stuff and the COVID situation going on right now. And I know that affected many people. So I took a break and I did some research for myself. I started learning Java on the side, and then I bought myself some textbooks and some other videos. I watched a lot of other YouTubers that basically inspired me to realize that this is possible on my own. I reached out to engineers at many big companies, some of them being from Facebook, some of them being from other smaller known startups, and I actually asked for their feedback. In their feedback, they were basically telling me that there was definitely known that you could learn this stuff on your own. It does not require a bootcamp. And Matt and Phil, which are Due to Code, they are famous on YouTube for talking about Flatiron School. You can go watch their latest video, and they basically said the same exact thing after they completed the program. And this is nothing against Flatiron School. Fantastic school. I really liked them, and I really liked the instruction. And I also really liked the instructors. Like I said, I found out the curriculum wasn't what I was looking for. It was something, I guess, aimed at a different audience. So then I go on to start learning myself, and I realized there's so much I don't know. So even with Ruby, I took some outside Ruby courses, such as Project Odin. That was another one. I had to remember the name. So the Project Odin, which is like a free online Ruby learning resource. I went on Codecademy. Team Treehouse. I did multiple courses, and I actually found out that there was a lot of parts of Ruby that I did not know from my section of Ruby in the bootcamp. So I learned a lot more things like lambdas as well as procs that we did not go over whatsoever. I also started learning algorithms on my own because it's something that we don't go over in our course, and that was like baffling to me because the first internship I even applied for, immediately I was hit with a code practice to basically see where I was at level-wise. And these were basic algorithms and I didn't know how to solve them. So what I did is I actually took some advice from other YouTubers and I started doing leak code problems as well as code wars. And those helped me immensely. But then I started noticing the limitations of the Ruby language. And it's not really limitations, more as the hardships. Like there was many ways to do things and I couldn't find many documentation on how to solve algorithms. So I decided to pivot. I started learning Java because Java was like what I can find the most resources on algorithms. And I got pretty far into it from the book I have, which I should have brought it out here, but it's Head First Java. So I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to check it out. But many people have recommended it. I recommend the book. It's definitely great. But then I actually started to learn Python after that. So after I had a pretty good fundamental grasping on Java, and this is all in the meantime while I'm waiting to switch cohorts, because I fell behind. You have this policy where you can switch cohorts. So I was waiting for that. And I was thinking about the cost in my head the entire time. And basically that's when I started to get concerned. Water break. Does anybody else like seltzer water? And this is not LaCroix. I actually buy the cheaper ones, but it's really good. And I put it in this because I feel like it's less bubbly. Like the other ones are just super carbonated if I leave it in the can and it hurts my stomach. All right, back to my story. So once I realized how much I was paying for a curriculum that I didn't really like and I didn't really feel like I was getting the most out of, that's where I really got concerned. I made the math and I actually called the school, which is very difficult. Getting the amount that you owe was not easy. It took me a process of almost 2.5 weeks just to find out what I owe. So turns out for 22 weeks I owed $7,500 exactly. And I wasn't even halfway through the program. So I was like immediately like, man, this is my time to pull out. I had already gotten a job at a tech company that offers an apprenticeship. That's what really sealed the deal for me. I noticed a lot of companies such as Twitter, Twilio, and other major companies. I think Facebook is now starting one too. They offer apprenticeship programs where basically you just pass some LeetCode tests. It is very competitive, but they offer you a position as an apprentice and you basically learn with them. They have their own mini boot camp. And you go through that and they teach you their stack and then you go on to be full-time as an engineer on the team afterwards. So I was brought on to a company, onto an entry-level position already. And so I was kind of factoring my options, like should I continue my bootcamp because I can't really afford to pay the monthly payment right now, or should I drop out and kind of figure out the money-wise stuff and then teach myself the things I actually found interesting. So this is kind of where the dilemma came. So $7,500 I would actually owe to the school, but because I signed an income share agreement, I cannot pay that off early, which I would have done if I could. I would have just taken the money out of savings and paid it off and walked away. But because of the income share agreement, they actually have a rule where you cannot pay it off early. You have to pay 10% of your income every month, as long as you're making $3,333. So because of that, I would be paying essentially $333 a month until not only did I pay $7,500, but I had to pay 1.5 times that amount, making it $11,000 and some change. So essentially for less than half of the boot camp, I already owed $11,000. So this is where kind of reality struck me. I was pretty upset about that. And I kind of was like freaking out because I didn't feel like I had earned that amount of money, but after discussing with the school, they actually had cut me a break for certain weeks and that was the best I could do. So kind of had to just take my losses there and I decided to ultimately drop out. From dropping out, I actually went ahead and purchased some Python courses on Udemy for a total of like $15. These courses are incredibly in-depth and I really enjoy them so far. I also have been practicing on other various free websites such as Codecademy to keep my Java as well as my Ruby up to date. I try to make some simple projects here on the side and kind of get a GitHub rolling. So I also did email Matt and Phil to get their opinion on the matter and kind of see where they stood on it. They have a great Discord channel and they respond to their fans, so I highly recommend their YouTube channel. I'll also post the link to the video I was mentioning earlier in the description so you guys can reference that. So that's kind of where my decision came from, mainly there. So that was basically the content, the cost, and then like again, that income share really screwed me over. If I would have just pulled a loan, I could have paid the loan off early with no prepayment penalty. Climb did offer a great loan option, and I guess I just didn't want to pay the payments monthly. So I've learned the hard way that nothing really comes free. I basically had to take a bigger loan to not pay money up front. So, and yes, I mean, this is obviously something that I should have foreseen, I should have read, but being that I was excited about it, I did not look into it. So ultimately, my recommendation for boot camps goes like this. If you're someone that comes from zero coding experience and you're trying to get into an industry like tech, which is very competitive and very hard to break into fast, I would do one. Like, I definitely recommend it. Also, if you just have the money to do it, that's also a great thing. Like, if you just have like 15K and you don't really need to worry about the cost of financing it or figuring out how to pay it back, be my guest. That's a great way to, I guess, level up your knowledge. So the way I saw it was just adding to my school loans. I already had a specific amount and this would just tack on another $15,000. So by the time I was able to leave, it's $11,000, but still unfortunate. So now I am paying that back, as well as trying to keep up with my current job to learn all that stuff very quickly and teaching myself on the side. Now, what I found is I actually prefer this because I'm learning the content that I want to learn. I'm learning more relevant materials such as Python, Node.js, and Flask. And I specifically Python 3. I am going to review Python 2, but it's specifically Python 3. I am constantly going on LeetCode and basically attempting code wars problems. And the reason is because I haven't really stopped. I was able to get my foot in the door into an entry-level position, but it's not the position that I'd like to be in ideally. So it's just basically giving myself time to, but I do love my job. I want to clarify that it is a great job, but I want to go ahead and level up basically my learning experience so I can move into a more engineering direct role. So that's kind of where my role stands. If you're someone who has good, like basically, I'd say, if you can hold yourself accountable, because learning, that's the hardest part for me really, is making sure I stay on top of it, and you can go by without anyone telling you, hey, you need to do this. I would say teach yourself. Udemy is extremely low cost for many of the courses. There's fantastic courses that are updated yearly for 2020 curriculums. You can look at the top programming languages that are hired right now and basically learn some of those. For example, JavaScript is huge. There's a modern React and modern JavaScript bootcamp type deal on Udemy, which would teach you all the fundamentals that you need, as well as give you some practice problems. From there, you can expand. And if you're buying these courses even at full price, which is like $100, but Udemy has sales all the time, if you're buying them at full price, I promise you'll still come out under $1,000 for just about every single course that you may need. Now, you will have to do projects on the side that basically are not given to you, such as they are in a bootcamp. You would need to come up with them on your own and not given instruction. So that's what I recommend. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave comments down below and I'll try to go through them as much as possible. I had a lot of thinking about this. I reached out to a lot of resources, including family and friends that basically could guide me on this. I was very torn because I did like the school and I did like the curriculum. It just wasn't for me. Now, the major thing is if you do want to attend Flatiron School, it is heavily web-based. You must want to be a web developer. Now, you can definitely apply those same, the knowledge that you learn throughout the program, you can apply that and expand to get yourself a less web-based position. Is that what I commonly see? No. So if you're interested in web, it's definitely a great route to go. And if you have zero experience, it's definitely a great route to go because they do teach you from beginner to, I guess, enough adequate knowledge to build some working programs. Now, again, the language, the choice that they do may be a little bit outdated from what I've noticed by today's standards, but this is just something to take note of. So the cost was really the big factor for me. I just cannot think that boot camps are worth that kind of level of money unless you really, really want to break into the field. And even then, I've heard of many graduates struggling to find jobs, mainly because they have to put in a lot of work on their own. A lot of people see is that you're guaranteed to get a job of like $40,000 or more, like they advertise almost immediately. This is rarely the case. Typically, you have to put in a lot of work and do some leak code exercises and stuff like that on your own to even go. Now, my last point was that they don't teach algorithms whatsoever, and I feel like that's a big problem. So being that almost every single interview I've had would have code problems, and even the ones that didn't, they expected you to know some basic like recursion problems and stuff like that. Now, you could definitely teach these yourself. Again, I did some code awares on the side, and that's just something I recommend. So if you guys have any questions, please reach out to me. Again, link will be in the description for the videos I mentioned earlier, and I hope this helps. I know this is just an opinion, and I want everybody to know that this is 100% opinion based. This is not fact. So basically, just because it wasn't a good experience for me doesn't mean it won't be for you. Now, again, I do want to say the instructor that I had was phenomenal. We met on a weekly basis and we talked about a lot of stuff. He also knew that I was kind of ahead of the curve and the program wasn't really fitting me to my needs. So he was trying to figure out things to kind of keep me busy and more interested in the way that I wanted to work in. So these are just some personal opinions, and if you guys have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. But again, I would just consider heavily the options that are free on the internet at a lower cost before spending that much money and committing yourself to getting in debt for a program that may or may not even get you a job. And then if it does get you a job, just know that you're going to have to work a lot harder than just the program. You're going to have to do a lot of extracurricular activities, and you're going to have to do a lot of extra learning on your own. Also, the program is mainly self-taught, so even though it does have a curriculum, you do need to basically hold yourself accountable to do it, because you could fall behind very quickly. And everything is document based with very little videos, so just know that, again, it is a lot of self-learning, and Stack Overflow, while helpful, people can be kind of mean. So this is just some things I've picked up along the way. So if you have any questions, leave below. I know I've said that like 10,000 times, so hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to like it and subscribe, and we'll talk some more tech stuff on the next one. Later, guys. Bye.